Hello, world. Welcome to the 39.6 Facebook Live show, the show where we talk to you about how to make your money work for you so you don't have to work for your money. One more episode of Car Week coming at you. Episode number 37 is a bigger car, a better financial decision. Thank you for everybody who has joined our Facebook group in the past week. We're up to 334 members at this point, I believe. We're growing quickly, rapidly on our way to hit 500. Wanted to hit that by Labor Day. I think we should eclipse that sooner. If you all invite half a friend, we'll get there very quickly. So please invite your friends and help us get to 500. Okay, so is a bigger car a better financial decision? Now, I love economical cars. I hate spending money on gas. I like to be able to park my car easily in the city. And I don't mind driving smaller cars. And I used to think that as long as something had good crash test ratings, that it was a safe car. Okay, so it was a reasonable conclusion based on crash test ratings, but it doesn't actually hold up in real life. Okay, because the way they do these crash tests is they are single vehicle tests. They are really only designed to be compared within the same class of vehicle. Okay, so there's the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, NHTSA, and there's also the IIHS, the insurance, I knew I was going to forget it as soon as I started saying it. The Institute for Insurance, the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety, the IIHS. Okay, so they do get all this data, which helps us figure out what actual risks there are associated with different vehicles. Okay, so because different cars of different sizes have different mass and different lengths, the laws of physics are the laws of physics, and the effect on a smaller car and the effect on a bigger car in a collision, even though the force on each other is equivalent, that's Newton's third law, that force being equivalent has a different amount of effect on different vehicles, right? So smaller vehicles, it will have more effect, and bigger vehicles, it will have less due to the different mass. Longer cars have more crumple zones, which allows more time of compression, which allows the passengers of the vehicle, the driver of the vehicle, to have also less impulse. Okay, so this is actually very important. So we buy vehicles because they are forms of transportation, but vehicles are actually, the highest risk thing you do on a daily basis from multiple aspects is drive your car to work and back. There are very few things where you could die in like a split second on any given day, regardless of how healthy you are, other than a car crash. There are very few things where you could kill somebody else in a second, regardless of how healthy you are or somebody else is, other than a car crash. Okay? There are few things you do on a given day that set you up for a lawsuit as easily as getting into a car crash. Okay? So your car is a very, 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 very high risk venue for you to be targeted in a lawsuit, and it's also somewhere where you could die or somebody else could die. Okay? We can spend a lot of time and effort keeping ourselves healthy, but if you get in an accident, you could die. It might not even be your own fault, right? So when you choose what vehicle you're going to buy, you have to think about what car is actually going to also insure you the best, you and the passenger. So if you have family, if you have kids, that value of the safety of your car gets amplified multiple fold. If you think about your own life and how many years of quality life you have ahead of you, that's X number of years. If you think about your children, it's much bigger. Okay, and you can often have a car with 4 or 5 people. I don't know how big your family is. And so that's a lot of value in one vehicle driving 70 miles per hour down the highway. Okay, so how much is that worth to you? I think for most of us, we would say that's like the most valuable thing, right? You're especially when you have a young child, um, their bones are skeletally immature. They are at a much higher risk of having a severe injury in a motor vehicle accident than a full-grown adult. Okay, that's why car seats have such strict rules. That's why we want children to be rear-facing for as long as possible, because they're skeletally immature, and they need more safety to make sure they are potentially as safe as adults in regular seatbelts. And seatbelts and airbags can actually injure young children when we don't use them properly. Okay, so in choosing a car, again, ideally, economically, I preferred smaller cars. But now that I'm buying vehicles for the family, I dug into the data. Okay, so here's IIHS data. They look at cars and publish data about every 3 years. So the last publication was for 2017 year vehicles or equivalent earlier models. They look at the deaths per million registration years. So like if a car is registered and you have 1 million of that car registered, how many deaths occurred in that group? Okay, deaths per 10 billion miles, because sports cars might not be driven as much as a daily driver, right, in terms of number of miles. So that's a way to kind of look at the two different things: how much is being driven versus just how long it's been in existence. Okay, and they have the average annual mileage there on the side. So they have individual vehicle data, and they also have concatenated it into categories to kind of see trends. So on average in 2017, it was 36 deaths per million registration years. That's over all vehicles. Okay, and that's much better than it was. Every few years they do this, the number gets better and better. And they're probably going to come out with a new one this year or next year, and the numbers will become even better because there's a lot more crash mitigation technology that's been rolled out on these vehicles, as well as increased safety. But the increased safety has really been in mitigation, like automatic emergency braking, lane keeping assist, things like that. Okay, but 2017, that was not as common on most vehicles. But we break it down here. Cars overall were 48. Again, the average was 36. Cars were higher. Minivans were 22. SUVs were 25. And pickup trucks were 29. Okay, so cars in general had the highest risk. Now, if we look at cars, they have categories from mini to small to mid-size and large. Minis like the Ford Fiesta and the Kia Rio. The Ford Fiesta had the worst numbers. It was 144. Mini as a whole was 108. Small four-door cars, 62. So those are both above average. Once you got to mid-sized four-door cars, it's still actually above average at 43 and 36. And large were actually at 52. So all four of those, all four-door cars were all above the average of 36. Two-door cars were all above the average, 41 up to 67. Sports cars up to here, 51 and 48. Luxury cars were the lowest of the cars, 22 for mid-size, 19 for large, and 20 for very large. And then station wagons, not many cars really go into the station wagon category, but mid-size was 4, but then small and mini were over 50. Okay, minivans were only 22. A lot of that could be saved potentially because of the people driving them. So we don't have that kind of data isolated out of this. But people who drive minivans are probably not driving as fast or as recklessly. They're often driving around more people and likely driving safer than your average driver. Okay, SUVs are at 25 as mentioned. Now, they break it down by size, small, mid-size, large, and very large, but also four-wheel drive versus two-wheel drive and luxury versus non-luxury. And I was really surprised to see this, how big a difference there is between four-wheel drive and two-wheel drive. Now, this probably is more for people in northern states where they have more inclement weather, more snow, potentially more rain, but the differences are really quite astounding. For small SUVs, four-wheel drive is 24, but two-wheel drive, it was 42, so almost twice as much. Midsize is 21 for four-wheel drive and 34 for midsize. Sorry, for two-wheel drive. For large, it wasn't as big of a difference, 22 and 26. But for very large four-wheel drive vehicles, it was very low, it was 7. But for very large two-wheel drive vehicles, it was actually 30. It was actually pretty high. That might have to do something with how big it is and how much more potentially difficult it is to drive a big vehicle in inclement weather, okay, just because it's a big car. Now, luxury cars had lower numbers in general. That could be because of the way people drive them, or maybe it's because it has Volvos in there. I'm not really sure, but midsize and large four-wheel drive luxury SUVs were less than 10. They were 9 and 5. Those were very low numbers in comparison to small or very large, which were at 20 in the 20s. Okay, pickup trucks were in the 20s for four-wheel drive and 30s for two-wheel drive. Now, they have then on the next page, I'll put a link to this IIHS document, but they list out the best and they list out the worst, and then they also have basically all the models they tested in small print on subsequent pages. This is really pretty impressive data because it's death data. Like in cancer, the gold standard is survival, overall survival. You can't, a death either happens or a death doesn't happen. It makes the data is very clean. And so that data doesn't lie. The issue with this is they don't have passenger death data, but that's because not all cars have passengers. And so the data will be very irregular, okay? It's very controlled when you just look at the drivers. And you can use that driver data and then extrapolate to then basically decide about the car itself and other people in the vehicle and how safe they are. But the ones that had the lowest death rate were the Yukon XL, okay? That was 0. The Infiniti QX60, Land Rover Evoque, that was the only small SUV in the top that did not have, that had basically 0 per million. The Lexus NX200T, C-Class four-wheel drive SUV, Mercedes, Porsche Cayenne, and interestingly, the Volkswagen Golf comes in as a four-door car that was at 0. I don't know why that is. Volkswagen's actually had pretty good mortality data. They were lower than you would expect vehicle per vehicle based on its class. The big Lexus GX was at 3. The Subaru Outback was at 3. This was this is categorized as a mid-size station wagon, but it was at only 3. So it's one of the safest vehicles in terms of deaths out there. And one of the reasons why I really like the Ascent, because the Ascent is basically a bloated Outback in a lot of ways. So it's probably safer. Rollover-wise, might not be as safe because it's a taller vehicle. But from every other standpoint, it's probably at least as safe as an Outback is. So I was very, very happy to see that statistically when looking into that, at the Ascent. The Nissan Leaf was the only other car out here that was in the less than 10 range, but I used to drive the Leaf. It doesn't get many miles, so you tend to drive super economically, which is slow and not long distances. So, but all of these vehicles overall were large vehicles in the best category. Okay, they were almost all SUVs with a few exceptions, a couple minivans in there, but almost all SUVs. The ones that had the highest death rates were basically all small or mini cars, and then a couple of mid-sized cars like the Nissan Maxima and the Verano. But the Fiesta was 141, the Hyundai Accent 116. These really small cars that can be very economical, much higher rates of deaths. So it's all in here. I'll send a link to it. You can look up your car. You can look up the cars you're interested. I was really interested in the Toyota Corolla because they have the hybrid Corolla that now gets about 50 miles a gallon, similar to the Prius. I think it's a great car. It has TSS 2.0 with all these safety features, except I don't think the 2020 model has blind spot monitoring. It will come out in the 2021 year, and so that was like a deal breaker for me. But the Corolla does not get good crash test ratings when it comes to survival. It was up at 54, which is well above average. It's about 50% higher than the average of 36. Now, this is in 2017 with all the new Toyota Safety Sense features that I would expect it to be much lower looking forward at current models and subsequent models. But historically, it hasn't been as safe of a car. The Subaru Legacy was only 14. Subaru's done very well in a lot of, however, it's classified again. The Outback was at 3. The Forester had pretty good numbers too. It was 17, not bad compared to, again, the average of 36. And there you go. Because it's only 2017, a lot of the newer cars like the Telluride, they're not on there, although the Telluride has gotten great crash test ratings. I would expect it to be very good. But hopefully IIHS comes out with new data this year or next year to help people looking forward. I think they're also coming out with car seat testing data. There's at least one website I've seen that has car seat testing out there, but I don't think it's really gotten into the mainstream with NHTSA or the IIHS yet, but definitely needs to be. All right, that's it for episode number 37. Until tomorrow, thanks for joining, and invite your friends. Have a great day.